Okay, now, if you use the chair and you like this. We're just about ready to start. Could you share your video and then we'll get it set up on the monitor? Perfect.
Yep.
And can we change this? Welcome you all to Singapore April event. Absolutely thrilled that there are a lot of people tonight. Thank you very much. I have the guests too, so I want to welcome those folks as well. My wonderful assistant here, right? Just to let everyone know, this is going to be recorded. So, or camera shy, get a bag or something, put it over your head, whatever you need to do. All right. Thanks. Oh, TJ, if you want to move on, there is. Very good. First of all, obviously, we want to thank the folks that make the SIM Arizona chapter work on a daily basis, and that is our fantastic sponsors. We have our platinum sponsor, M3BI, and I don't think we have any representative from those tonight. Unfortunately, Tane, who is also part of a board, is, I think he had some sort of fire at his office, which doesn't sound good, right? We sort of had one here, didn't we? And silver sponsorship, our great friends from Expedient and RGP. So can we please show some appreciation to those folks? Thank you very much. CJ. Yeah, I know. I'm also going to do a shout out to our enterprise members. So these are members of SIM, the SIM Arizona chapter, who put a number of folks from their organizations through to membership, and it's at least 3 people. And that really shows a dedication from the management team to bring their up and coming leaders through the ranks of SIM and give them access to some of the incredible SIM training that the programs that we have. So thank you for those. And yes, thank you. Before I talk about our main sponsor, I just want to give a great shout out to our drinks sponsor this evening, Zerto. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. Woo. Well, I hope you show as much love for the main sponsor. That's all I can say. So we're absolutely thrilled for Grant and his team to be sponsoring us for this evening and for the dinner. Thank you so much, E360. And perhaps Barry, you want to just say a little bit about what 360 is about?
Thank you. Barry Henn here. I'm field CTO for E360. We're a small award-winning consultancy firm, system integrator, operating in the Southwest here. We do cloud adoption, digital transformation, and just about anything in the technology realm, including ChatGPT API building and applications around that. So we hope you enjoyed tonight, and thanks for allowing us to be here.
Woo! Yeah, go on, don't be shy. Laura is our treasurer, by the way, and is an incredible dynamic member of our board.
And I am a lot of yours pain in the tushes when it comes to things. Anyway, I also wanted to thank our badge sponsor, Dynamic. I know we were a little late tonight in getting the badges, but I wanted to make sure we got a shout out to you and thank you so much for being a sponsor and being on the panel this evening as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you. All right, so we've done those we've done that preamble. We would normally go around the tables getting guests to introduce themselves, but we have a lot of guests. Okay, so maybe the guests who are here for the first time tonight, could you just stand up? And let's give them a warm welcome to Sim, Arizona. So we hope you have a fantastic time and consider, of course, becoming members, because that's what it's all about. Really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Oh, ChatGPT's in again. Oh, they've turned it off. That's good. Okay, great. Well, we got some disco lights. Fantastic. Okay. All right. Normally we have an education update from our director of education, the fabulous Professor Dan Mazzola. But we actually got a little bit of a surprise guest this evening. So we're going to use this opportunity to introduce somebody new, right? So,
well, good evening. Normally, I don't bring students this night because they're doing final exams, final projects. School's over next week. Summer school starts in 3 weeks. So if you've got kids, we get it. But we have Gabby with us tonight. Now, Gabby, you're going to have to tell just a little bit about yourself, but you're graduating, right?
Correct, yeah.
Tell us a little bit. What are you graduating and what you
So hello, everyone. My name is Gabby Benavides, and I'm a business data analytics student at Arizona State University, and I'll be graduating next month and very excited to be starting a full-time role at PetSmart on their data analytics team. And I just really appreciate the invitation to attend this event tonight, and I'm very excited to learn more about ChatGPT and the rest of the topics today. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Gabby. Hey, see, the graduates from our school are just amazing. Wouldn't you want, I've got more of them if you want to hire them. I've got students looking for internships. It's amazing. Reach out. We'll get you set up. All right. Thank you.
thanks, Dan. Great. Okay. So just want to highlight a couple of upcoming events that we'd love to have you part of. So we have coming up in May 9th, if I can read that, we have the Sim Women Leadership Summit, which is actually happening in Chicago. Always an incredible event. Anybody who can make that, please do. It's going to be fabulous. We also have an Arizona Technology Council Cybersecurity Summit coming up, and we have Ron somewhere. Hey, so Ron Schott is our liaison to the Arizona Tech Council, and he's a member of SIM and Arizona Tech Council. Thank you, Ron. So it's what? May 11. It is. Exactly. Thank goodness we got the slide right. Yes, and I think we're going as well. Our company that I work for, we're cybersecurity, we're going to be there as well. Also very thrilled to talk about our next social. So this is obviously kind of more formal event, this dinner. We also intersperse them with more social networking, not the social network, networking socially event. And we're just finalizing this down, but I can announce it's going to be hosted by our good friend Brett Wingert, who works for Blue Cross Blue Shield, and he is going to at least host the facility. And we're going to have some sponsorship from that from our good friends at Packet Watch, who are one of our enterprise clients, enterprise members, and also from TT Rec. It's brand new. right? Here he is. It's his new company. So Derek is also on the board. All right. He's our director of programs, and he's just starting a new company, aren't you? And you are going to sponsor. So thank you, Derek. Really appreciate it. And congratulations on the new company. All right, very good. And then there is the, on May 24th, there is the SIM Women Leadership Summit, which is a virtual summit. So please do attend that if you can't get to the Chicago event. I'm also going to announce, I was hoping we don't have, Brad hasn't come tonight, or hasn't arrived yet, I don't think. So Brad Lons is is a longtime member of SIM. He's the CIO for Copper Point Insurance. He's also recently volunteered to be our first SIM Enclave leader. So Enclaves is a special group for C-suite IT folks to meet in a very elevated setting. And this is sort of replacing what used to be called the CIO Roundtable for SIM. And we're hosting that also in May. So look out for announcements for that if you are a C-suite IT person. Okay, thanks, CJ. All right, coming to the meat of the evening. This should be pretty fascinating. I imagine it's going to be pretty interactive because I'm sure a lot of people in the audience have got questions, got some experience, want to understand what this world is about. This is going to be a sort of presentation and panel hybrid with lots of interactivity. We are very pleased to be joined by our good friend Quentin McGrath, who you may remember was actually presented to us in person last year, I think. If that was
That's correct, yeah.
and he's joining us remotely. But we're going to have 3 panelists here locally, and it's going to be led by our good friend at E360, Roy Dauber, sorry. And Roy, you're going to introduce the panelists for us, right?
So we've got Quentin McGrath, obviously, he already got introduced. We've got Joff. And we've got Brendan. Thank you guys so much. Please come up. Yeah. Can you just give a quick blurb about each of you?
Sure, of course. So I'm Brandon Wilson. My company is Steady Dynamic. We're a digital solutions provider headquartered here, offices in Poland and Serbia. And the topic's super relevant to us because we're actually in process of building a product that is meant to provide a number of AI assistive tools for digital transformation consultants. So happy to be here. Thank you. Got it. Want to do it again? Okay. I'll do that one more time. That better? All right. Okay, I'll start from the top. Brandon Wilson, Steady Dynamic. We are a digital solutions provider headquartered here in Phoenix. We have offices in Poland and Serbia, and super relevant topic for us because we're actually building a product as we speak, which has a number of AI assistive tools for digital transformation consultants and digital transformation projects. And so happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm Jeff Popal. I'm a professor of business analytics and machine learning at ASU. For the past 2 years, I've taught business data analytics at the undergraduate level and machine learning at the graduate level. I also help co-direct our Masters of Science in Business Analytics program. Prior to my 2 years, I'm coming up on 2 years at ASU. I worked as a data scientist at IBM for several years, leading teams, building machine learning capabilities, and happy to be here. Thank you.
And Quentin, real quick.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. So Quentin McGrath, I'm doing a number of things right now. I'm on a number of boards, advisory councils and boards. I'm an adjunct professor at the University of South Florida, currently lecturing the MBAs, executive MBAs in management information systems. I'm part of the SIM national organization, chairing up the SIM Rethink Everything shared interest group, and then multiple other things. Background in Deloitte, I spent 24 years in Deloitte, was the CIO of the South African Post Office. Prior to that, started up an internet solutions provider and a couple of others. But very excited to be back with you. It's great memories of my time with the Arizona team a couple of months ago.
Thank you. And I'm Roy Dauber. I'm the resident ChatGPT whisperer at E360. I also am the observability lead, and I'm formerly at Qualcomm for over a decade. One of the first SREs at Qualcomm and a lead SRE for many, many years. So, yeah. And so let's begin. Let's begin the conversation around AI. Are we going to have the slides up, by the way? Yeah. Okay. So we'll just start with a very simple question. Oh, okay. Sorry. We'll just start with a very simple question. And to each of the panelists, what is AI and what does it mean to you?
Well, I think what we're seeing certainly with ChatGPT and all the examples today is from a digital assistant perspective is really a major leap forward in technology that, not that long ago, think about, although OpenAI has been around a while and certainly all of our visibility and access to it is a couple really important components. Number one is just the ability to communicate and get response in natural language. It really changes everything in terms of how you interact with it. But in large part, and we had this discussion earlier, from our perspective, and many of the developers and architects and kind of senior technology people in the space, things have gotten somewhat stale toward the end of last year. And at least what ChatGPT has done, for better or for worse, has created excitement and a wave of innovation in a space where a lot of people are kind of running out of things to talk about and do. Not that they weren't being productive, but I feel like there's a number of people we speak with that feel like they just got, their kids in the candy store in terms of having access to something where it's going to stimulate a ton of innovation, a ton of advancement, and a ton of benefit, so long as everybody can always figure out what to do with it, which is part of why we're here tonight.
So first of all, that's a huge question. I actually like the direction of breaking down the definition of AI. I think it's a really responsible development that we've seen, definitions of, for example, weak AI versus AGI, which would be artificial general intelligence. So I think for a long time, there were things that we were referring to as AI that, many of us who were developing the tools that were then being marketed as AI, the technical folks, we would kind of scoff at that. We'd be like, that's really clever marketing, right? All I built was a machine learning model that would do price optimization, for instance. And those of us who built it didn't consider it to be intelligent, right? We knew the algorithms. So I do like the development that now folks are saying, hey, there's weak AI where the focus is narrow. It could just be spam detection. It could just be fraud detection. But ultimately, there's this thing called AGI, which, this is moving in the direction of being able to just, give the system a very broad task, and it's able to break it down and use human language to, parse the question, figure out what task it needs to do, and to do it in a way where, the responses and interactions with us are indistinguishable from human interactions. And I don't know if we would ever really know when we've encountered AI. I like to think that we would know it when we see it. And I can tell you, having demoed ChatGPT to now hundreds of students at ASU, you should see the looks on their faces. I think it's one of those where, they know this is different. This is not like anything we've ever seen before.
And maybe just to build on that from an overall perspective, if you just take a look at what are the elements of this ChatGPT thing. And if you think about it, it literally is the best of human thought all the way through to the worst of human thought that's been put together, and essentially a model has been created from it. So think of it, for instance, as we've learned ourselves, we've realized that coffee is hot in general, or coffee could be cold, I guess, if it's iced coffee. But essentially, coffee and hot and coffee and cold are related. But most times I walk up to someone and say, "Is your coffee hot?" They can say, "Yes, the coffee's hot," because that's most general terms. So what we've created over time in our mind is a relationship between coffee and hot. And if I had to ask, when did I learn about coffee being hot? I wouldn't be able to go back and say, I read that particular article and that told me that coffee was hot, and therefore that was my basis. And so we've got this brain, if you wish, digital brain, if you wish, which has been taught on the best and worst of human thought, which is then refined down through things like reinforced learning, or reinforced learning through human feedback and many other mechanisms, to say, right, let's take this best and worst of human thought and actually bring it into something that's better and that responds effectively. And so we've got this huge brain. We're now limited to a certain extent, and by continuously training and pre-training it, and refining it, we've then, or OpenAI in this case, or many of the other organizations, have created a solution, essentially a digital brain that is useful for us, and then provides the answers and the human-like responses. I would say there is grave concerns in many places around hallucination. We know that, for instance, we go back and look at the elections when Hillary Clinton was running. There was a lot of information in the press about Hillary being president. So at one stage asking, was Hillary president of the US? And yes, GPT would say yes, yes, she was in this particular time frame. And so that's the whole hallucination. There's no understanding of truth or untruth. It literally is the statistical model that's been trained on enough information that the most likely next word or next phrase is then produced as you ask it something. And in many cases, because it's been trained on really good stuff, you get some really good answers. But realistically, there's a huge amount of need for critical thinking and careful thought around what we're doing and how we're actually using this. It is not truthful. It may be, but it is not guaranteed to be truthful. It is not. We're not certain about how the actual system works, and therefore can we trust it. And so that's a really important part, kind of the basis of this whole ChatGPT revolution, if you wish.
Perfect. Can we go next slide? And we'll get back. We'll have a conversation about whether or not we should be worried. Everybody has different opinions. I think I'm of the mindset we might want to be, but we'll let the panelists think through that as well. So the current landscape, right? ChatGPT can obviously, yes. So we've got the current landscape, Code Assist. Obviously, you guys have seen or maybe have heard of Microsoft Copilot, and even ChatGPT itself can, really, really be helpful in templatizing some code for people. In my experience, probably works 90% of the time, the answer. And the hardest part that I find with programming is getting started. And so I think there's a lot of use case, and it's going to shortcut software development in a lot of ways. The next one is Cliff Notes and Summaries and Autonomous Task Management. I'm just going to hand over to the panelists and kind of let's talk about leveraging AI as a programming assistant, and what are the risks? What are the risks and what are the benefits?
So we've actually, as an organization, tasked nearly everybody in the development field to actually use all the tools. So hopefully we can speak a little less anecdotally about the effect. And so far, the results and will confirm are very impressive. And so the use of specifically the Copilot, like GitHub and the GitLab co-assisted these tools, I mean, specifically in things like front-end technologies, I mean, we're hearing numbers of being able to develop and deploy 6 to 8 times as fast as what they could do before. DevOps, backend, some other areas, there's more constraints. maybe more things that it actually just can't see or know, and so sometimes arrives at wrong conclusions. But what I would say is, regardless of whether it's, 70% assistive, 80, 90, whatever that number is, whatever that remaining balance is, really needs to be in the hands of someone who can act as the auditor, editor, and validator of its output. And in capable hands, it's incredible. I mean, it is actually, I think, ultimately will play out to be extremely critical in, from our perspective, either deploying apps, let's say, more quickly and for less cost, or being able to develop much more substantial applications for, let's say, the original budget you had slated to, for what to accomplish. So you're not sacrificing as much in terms of prioritization of features or roadmap in order to meet a budget. You can actually go a lot further with your runway, which is really significant. And the other point I'll just raise is in terms of where are the first kind of common easy applications. We've seen a ton on its ability to do content generation, which is going to get more significant with GPT-4 because now we're incorporating imagery and video and all sorts of other new features. But I think right now, at least the sweet spot, and specifically one where is probably a great place to get started, is really that, again, that kind of evolution or leap forward from kind of decision tree chatbot-like experiences to true digital assistants. Yeah, at least right now, one of my favorite practical use cases is, and I'm sure many of you have seen, where Microsoft's got its Office Copilot feature. A guy shows up late to a Teams event and says, "Hey, Copilot, summarize what I miss," and give me. If you think about where those type of features can benefit us, and specifically to grab and aggregate data from multiple indices and multiple applications, and really start to look like what a proper or true digital assistant is, I think is an excellent early use case that is also likely to present actual value and return on those type of investments.
So Brandon and I talked about this earlier. One of the things that I think is exciting, but also there's a downside to this, is the potential for ChatGPT to release a bit of a creative tidal wave on the world. Just a couple anecdotes. Someone in my life has attention deficit disorder, and this is a very creative person, somebody who has had some exposure to front-end web development. They understand coding, but they're very creative, right? And it was really interesting to watch this person get access to a tool that essentially let them get past those stumbling blocks that would typically stop them from pursuing their creative endeavors, right? So if you understand this personally or through other people, you would know that there are very creative people in the world who, once they get into the weeds of developing something brilliant, once it gets hard, all of a sudden the pantry starts calling. Anything that's easier than writing the code or doing those meticulous things that their brain considers to be minutia, right? And so I can't help but wonder how big the creative tidal wave is going to be that's going to get unleashed by this. Now, the downside of that is there could be a lot of things produced that are garbage. And we have thoughts on that as well, right, Brandon? Now, the downside, and this is another anecdote. So just earlier this week, I taught a section of my undergraduates, and we were talking about the ethics of data analytics. And to kind of prove a point, I said, hey, let's step through a scenario. Let's pretend that I don't know Python. Let's pretend that I don't really know anything except for the basics of machine learning. And let's see if I can do something dangerous and unethical using ChatGPT. And we did. I had a data set that I found online that had information about bank loan applicants. We had information about who received loans, who didn't receive loans. And then there were a bunch of characteristics of the applicants. I didn't tell ChatGPT what those characteristics were, okay? I just said, hey, I know the basics of classification. I want to predict who should get a loan, who shouldn't get a loan. And oh, by the way, it'd be really great if you could help me develop a web application to actually deploy this so people could use it. We did it in class in 15 minutes. ChatGPT wrote the Python. It wrote a script that deployed a web app on my local computer. Obviously, it wasn't online, but I don't imagine it would be that hard to get ChatGPT to help us get that deployed straight to the web. And then we stopped and we talked about it. And I said, what is wrong with this model? And we had a great conversation because guess what? One of the top variables that ended up being a predictor in that model was ethnicity. Now, I'm pretty sure that's against the law. If any bank ever deployed a model or got caught making loan application decisions based on the color of people's skin, I'm pretty sure that's against the law, right? ChatGPT didn't know that. I didn't tell it what my variables were. So obviously, this could be very dangerous in the hands of people who either innocently or not innocently, you know, they could build things that are very powerful.
Yeah, and maybe just to add kind of both sides of the coin. One is I would suggest that if we're not using things like Copilot or Ghostwriter, etc., along with the team actually in development, I think we are certainly losing out, and we're going to have a situation where we're not going to be able to compete to the same extent with others who are. And so the whole advantage that's gained through using AI, using human plus AI, we've seen that huge advantage. On the other side, I would, I think certainly Jeff has just talked about one particular situation, and it does kind of frame up the whole picture of, yes, without guardrails, we can really send this AI out into the world and can do really bad damage. And in fact, if you go look at ChatGPT or GPT-4, when they release a system called this, they gave a list of a whole lot of things that could cause damage and that we need to then design and develop against. So just like driving a car, we have responsibility as a driver of a car to do it in an appropriate and correct way. If we just let the car go ahead and do its own thing, I'm sure we'd have catastrophe. And so part of it is also, as leaders, as IT leaders, we have a huge responsibility here in taking the particular capability and leveraging in our business. The other thing I would just throw out there is, and if one doesn't know what's been built into ChatGPT in terms of code segments, backdoors, those types of capabilities. And the question is, even in the code that it's writing, is it written in a way that, from a cybersecurity perspective or from a penetration test perspective, we're comfortable with it? And so I would just the same as one would look at developers and designers who are writing code, clearly to go through the same rigor in terms of penetration test and validation, security test, and ensuring that the actual code that's coming out, be it a Copilot or be it written directly by a ChatGPT or a large language model of sorts, that we're actually validating that. And so the key thing, really looking at this whole model, huge advantages that we have to take advantage of. But on the downside, be really careful, and I'd say even more so than a human employee, if you wish. We've got to be just really critical in our thinking and validating and doing all the tests that we would do as wise CIOs and IT leaders in terms of what are we protecting, how are we protecting, how are we validating, are we sure that those capabilities that are being produced come out there. So I don't want to be a naysayer. I think it's huge, and there's huge advantage. There's the Auto GPT, which is an even more interesting one, which is really almost self-writing. So it actually takes the code, you give it a goal, it creates the code, it does optimization of the code all by itself, gives you the result. And one of the issues around Auto GPT is if you let it go, where's it going to end? So if your goal is, essentially full ownership or full world domination, that is certainly a goal that could be attempted in Auto GPT type cycle, unless you put appropriate controls and blocks in it.
Really good insights. I think we should move on to the next slide and talk a little bit about the future. So we have Deep Voodoo, Semantic, and these are AI applications, by the way, and deeper assistive technology. I recently experimented a bit with like reading up about Semantic and how it works, and basically what it is a narrating AI that basically speaks like a human. So now you can create videos that narrate themselves with like a human looking AI assistant that presents itself just like a human. So what do you guys think about this?
Well, not specific to any individual platform, but and something to what Quentin referenced earlier is, today, obviously the large language models are dependent on the language, words, sentences, and context that is there. And I think where we're going to see some really
Turned it on.
I think where we're going to see, yeah, okay. I think where we're going to see some really interesting things evolve that even possibly transcend some of the limitations of its kind of contextual understanding of language is when we get to imagery, which I think from an input standpoint gives it a whole new, kind of landscape or canvas to work from. And so I'd spent some time thinking earlier what that does to allow people to give it new inputs that could be beneficial. And I think this is a space, I mean, you hardly can even get access to it at the moment and, on the wait list of GPT-4. But I was thinking earlier, I have a tree, which looks like it's dying in my front yard. And I can imagine a scenario where in the future, you should be able to take a picture of that thing, it understand what that plant is, then contextually grab from other databases, the weather pattern over the last year, how much rain there was, potential reports of other, diseases, tree diseases in the neighborhoods and other things, and be able to help you diagnose that and then make recommendations. And so you of course could do that if you knew what the tree was and you told it, but I think it from an interface standpoint changes everything when you can start just snapping pictures of stuff or having an image upload and start asking it tasks. So I personally am really excited, kind of a nerd about computer vision and machine vision anyways, but I think it's going to break some of the constraints of the context that it's currently exists because of its ability to simply only understand words and sentences. Yeah.
Michael, use the microphone.
You're talking about the futures, and I understand that what we could do with it and everything else, and I've been hearing all of that stuff. What I'm also concerned of, what is the impact this is going to have on society as a result? For example, from what I'm seeing with ChatGPT and all the others, I think it's going to be devastating for the university environments where your humanities is going to go away, your journalism is going to go away, those arts are going to go away because there's going to be no need. Just get a kid from high school that knows how to run this stuff and they could do the same thing. So could you guys give us not only the future of what we can do with this, but what you think is going to be the impact on society as a result of that?
Yeah. Maybe I can.
Yeah, I was going to
start.
say Quentin, who specializes in AI ethics, might be a very interesting candidate.
Yeah, Quentin, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So I think you've hit on a really important part, and to be honest, part of my framework, as I've been answering the questions, is this whole ethical thinking. And ethics, I'd say very quickly, is ethics is not just not doing bad things, but it's also doing good. And so the whole focus around ethical thinking, and if you look at the progressive work that's been done around AI ethics, it's around how do we look at this balance between do no harm, making sure there's autonomy, making sure there's justice. So I think the example that Jeff gave earlier, make sure that things are not biased or pushed against a particular group, that there's autonomy. And so what we have to look at, and if you take a look at all the large organizations, they've adopted kind of almost that bioethical principle set as a basis. So autonomy, do no harm, do good, justice, and then they've added explicability to it often. And they've created a set of AI principles that they now are building into their systems and putting them into practices. So for instance, if you take a look at the large language models, someone like OpenAI has gone through a process of this putting guardrails in place to make sure that it actually then restricts the results in a positive light. That you can't go in and say, right, I want to create a bomb, and what's the recipe to create a Molotov cocktail, for instance. And so they've used that. Another group, for instance, DeepMind, has used a set of 23 principles. And so each of them are taking a different approach. But the big question that I have is, okay, so whose ethics? What is the foundation for ethics? And if we know that ethics are culturally related, we know that ethics are contextual, based on the situation. Often we take a different ethical stance. And the whole thinking, when you start looking at AI in general and how it has then been applied within organizations, is the ability to think about it from that holistic perspective in terms of, if I do this, what's the result, and am I comfortable with it, using a number of ethical lenses, ethical basis frames as a basis. And part of what we need to be looking at is the AI deviating from its goal? So one of the comments I made earlier around Auto GPT, one of the aims there is to give it a goal and then allow it to try and go towards that goal. And then we need to validate and test that we're not deviating from that particular goal and protect it and stop it if it is.
I agree with you on that, but that's from a standpoint of those who are controlling the AI and developing the AI and putting that direction. I don't have a problem with that. I think ethics is the main thing, and that's going to be questionable. It's going to be gray area all over the place. What I'm concerned with is the guy sitting in a newspaper. It says, I don't need to hire journalists anymore. I got a tech sitting down in the corner. He can write the whole article for me using ChatGPT, and it's been proven they can do it and probably do a better job. So this opens up the whole problem, like it's the whole area of humanities, arts,
Absolutely.
what's real, what's not, all this stuff. What do you guys think is going to be the issues on the social life? That's what I'm concerned with right now, specifically
Absolutely.
the universities. Because I look at the universities, the only ones that can really use what's going on right now is the engineering groups and the tech groups.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let me make one brief comment, and I'll hand it over to the others. So you're absolutely right. I think the whole social aspect is critical. If I just take a look at it, give an example. So CNET used that same approach of using ChatGPT to do their generation of the articles. And they had to retract a whole lot of articles because, number one, there was plagiarism. Number two, there was incorrect information. And number three, it was repetitive. So going back to my earlier comment, this thing actually hallucinates. And if we as business leaders and IT leaders accept or think that this is going to be a human replacement without the appropriate skills around it, I think we're going to fail. And so that I agree with you, this whole thinking about how do we then apply it to the people and the people who are affected. Let me keep quiet and give the other members a chance.
So I have a few thoughts. First, the shortest answer to your question is we don't really know. I mean, the reality is when we start thinking about the implications of potentially exponential technological progress, I'm pretty sure us humans don't have a very good track record when it comes to anticipating how that will turn out, right? I mean, when you're talking about the possibility of thousands of years of learning in a matter of days, right? There was a quote I heard from Sam Harris in a TED Talk years ago where he said, hey, when we approach AGI, whoever gets there first, right? If they're 6 months ahead of the competition, they might as well be 500,000 years ahead of the competition because that's how powerful it will be. Now, what are we doing at the university? I'm very concerned about that because that's my livelihood. And I will be honest, I had a strange thought when I was driving over here. My wife, and she'll be okay with me telling you this, her celebrity crush is Keanu Reeves, okay? I've learned to live with that for quite a while. But I had this strange thought, because we've got Deep Voodoo and Semantic up on the screen here. And I had this thought, if there's ever a day where my wife is serious about learning machine learning, we're very quickly getting to the place where she could actually queue up Keanu Reeves to teach her machine learning. And I like to think that she would choose me, but I don't know. Okay. And that's weird, right? But I might have to get therapy for that. So back to your question, what are we doing at the university? Well, we were talking about this earlier. Dan and I were talking about this earlier. We obviously have to change the way we teach. We have to teach curiosity. We have to teach critical thinking. We have to teach students how to use this technology. But again, ultimately, we don't know exactly what's going to happen. I do have a book recommendation that I think could give all of us a little bit of hope. The book is obviously outdated by now, but it's not too old. It's a Tom Davenport book from a few years ago called Living with AI. And basically him and some other, I think Harvard faculty members do a series of case studies where they look at different industries where AI, different levels of AI were generated and used to kind of integrate with the work that they were doing. And basically they found that there's always this initial fear that, oh my gosh, we're all going to be out of work. But they found that in a lot of these situations, there were always circumstances where there was a human that was needed, particularly for auditing, for editing, for handling the corner cases that the AI wasn't able to deal with. Now, the trajectory that we're on, like we could get to a place with AGI where that all goes away. And I guess I hope at that point, universal basic income is sufficient that we can all just drink coffee and read books all day.
And I'll just add a little bit because we have run into more than one person suffering from like an existential crisis over this. People have like prepared, thought they threw their entire career away studying, data science or artificial intelligence, who are now just basically feel like they've been replaced. I think it is an important question, and we do task people, and part of that is, and I kind of made this reference earlier, if 80% of what you do can be automated or assisted, then don't worry about that part. Worry about the 20% that can't. And so what we have asked a lot of people to do is really try to redefine, I should say, what makes them an expert by way of experience. And at least in some ways, you could argue what's in our heads, our own human and professional experience and expertise actually kind of operates a lot like a large language model, but it's not known to the public large language models. And so you've got a great deal of wealth in your head and your own experience that right now, at least maybe until AGI, cannot be performed by what we're calling AI, maybe better representative as cognitive computing at this point. And so it still doesn't have intuition. I mean, it still lacks creativity. It's reuse. That's not the same thing as inception of, from a creative standpoint. It only knows, frankly, what's possible. It doesn't really handle not possible. We were having an actually discussion this morning about, like, if you think about what, if effectively it just, ingested everything ever known to man that's available publicly on the internet, not many people talk about their failures on the internet. Companies post their use cases that worked. So it thinks, here's how you do something that works, but right now it's not being informed because it's a closed system on what doesn't work. Take that same task to a person and say, well, the concept of possible, not possible, we're not a closed system, we're an open system, and we have access to things that it doesn't. And so I think we're still probably a great, period of time away from, where there's this like real notion of, where we go to universal basic income. But I do think it's worth being serious from a standpoint to understand what it can't do and focus on redefining yourself and refining yourself of what it cannot do.
just let me throw out one comment, very brief comment there. Back in '97, Deep Blue beat Gary Kasparov, but we still play chess. Jeopardy was beaten by IBM Watson, but Jeopardy is still a very popular. There's the whole thing about human desire for humans to choose and be part of things that is not going to automatically be pushed aside.
So AGI is artificial general.
Intelligence, artificial general intelligence. And so I think next slide, and I think we get into the nitty gritty here, like the end of the conversation. How dangerous do we feel this could be? Should there be a kill switch, and should it be regulated? What do you guys think?
I don't know, does Quentin want to start on this one?
I think the potential, just like everything that's been created, this is absolutely a potential for huge, a huge impact. What I would say though is this model is essentially a centralized model. Now, yes, you are able to create smaller models, but the most powerful ones, be it OpenAI, the Blue model, the ones we've seen from DeepMind and so on, those are centralized model. So if something went drastically wrong, Sam Altman could pull the plug on OpenAI, and all the interface to OpenAI, all the APIs would come to a grinding halt and would stop. So in some ways, there is a kill switch, if you wish. Now, there are so many of these large language models, and yes, it can be replicated, that it becomes harder and harder progressively. But I do think that there is that basis. So I do think there is absolutely a need for us to say, just like in nuclear warfare, we need to be able to say there are controls around something that has this level of potential global impact. And I do think that we're going to have to move towards that type of thinking from a global perspective, from a regulation perspective. This is as powerful, if not more powerful, than a nuclear type of situation. And so we've got to figure out how do we put the same level of controls and governance and regulations, et cetera, around that, and the monitoring that's going to be needed to make sure we look after it. So the potential for harm is huge, but the potential for good is equally huge. And I'm still convinced that with the right focus on human flourishing and how to actually drive it forward, any chance of us saying pulling the plug is going to be losing out on that huge benefit as well, whether it's using AlphaFold to actually figure out new protein approaches, or if it is actually solving some of the major issues as humans that we're trying to deal with. There's that positive side of it. But we have to have the capability of saying enough is enough and drawing a line, part of the autonomy that has to be built in. And that's going to require everyone agreeing that takes place. Right across the world.
Yeah, and I think I'll just add, I mean, across nearly everything else that humanity touches, it inevitably results in some level of regulation, governance, or risk mitigation. I mean, we have protections for our food and agriculture systems, for our energy systems, and I think, unfortunately, we'll probably have to learn some pretty hard lessons before people get serious about actually intervening, so to speak. But I mean, even already right now, Italy turned it off for a while. France is considering it. And, I think you'll see a hard pause and probably we'll have to learn some hard lessons before, it's properly, proper intervention takes place. I think what maybe concerns me greater than that is the inequity of that regulation, because there are going to be places where it will not be regulated, or certainly not in the same way. And what does that mean? And I don't necessarily know that we should open that up for this discussion, but that does also concern me.
We have some questions.
So I just wanted to say respectfully, I think it's a little naive in that we have an entire industry, cybersecurity, built around unethical people. And there's a saying, it's easier to look into the lightness than the darkness. And the only people I see online talking about the darkness are Lex Friedman and Elon Musk when it comes to AI. And I think it's naive to believe, I mean, ethics, that's great. We all have ethics. We can all agree to certain rules, but that's not how the world works. And I learned at a SIM meeting that, even the mafia was getting into, cyber crimes and whatnot because it was profitable. And it's inevitable that it's going to happen regardless. It's inevitable.
Yeah.
And we're talking about, you're seeing more and more like it's becoming sentient. And we all know that humans lie, cheat, and steal. And we're talking about this like stopgap where, we can shut it down, but we're also talking about that it's being mainly used as programming language. So who's to say that this AI is not putting in programming language that in the future will not allow us to shut it down?
Well, on that happy note, just a couple of things. There is dessert here, right? This is being made by humans. And the bar will remain open till 7:45, I think. I think the nice lady is going to make it 7:45. So do make, because we will have a little mingle afterwards. So if you want to drink, grab one. Okay. Woo! I'm just glad I'm coming to the end of my career. That's all I can say. Sorry, 1 second. Yeah.
Backing away from the existential threat to humanity. A lot of times it comes down to monetization, right? What has IBM Watson, why they've put so much time into it is because they can monetize it. I don't know the business model for OpenAI. Do you guys know how it's going to work? Is there, if I'm developing a website and I want to have a certain level of AI built into it, is there going to be an API that I can tap into to use this technology?
So I can answer this one. The answer is already yes, right?
Correct.
You can already right now use so the plugins portion of ChatGPT is coming out soon. And that basically allows you to say, I want to create this dish that I ate at this restaurant. And I also want to book me a reservation for this restaurant, but also please write me the recipe, the amount of calories, the ingredients I need to create this dish at my own home. And it'll go out, do the reservation on OpenTable. It'll book flight tickets if it's a restaurant that you want to go to that's not in town. And all of that is already being written by some of the major corporations. That you know. So your Experian, your OpenTables, right. And while it still only has data up to September 2021. So this is an extension of the intelligence where you can give it a command, it goes out there and does whatever it is. And so, and that piece is also somewhat regulated. That API is only open to major corporations right now, but GPT 3.5 and below, I think, is open to the public. You could go to the website today, click developer, and go to a playground and start developing against it, and it gives you access to do all of that. So one more question before we can
I maybe just make a comment on that, because I think it's important to recognize that the large language models, so Bloomberg GPT has just come out and they've trained it specifically on the financial data within Bloomberg. And so we've seen this whole process of smaller language models that have been applied to a particular area as well. So that's one model. Another model is to use a large language model, and as you say, point it at your own data. And so you can actually say, use a large language model thinking against my data set and give me some answers. You're not giving that data away. And so those two models are current and are actually being used out there. And I've got a lot of hope for the large language models like the Bloomberg GPT helping us with financial data. They'll actually be able to guide more appropriately and also not be quite as nuclear as maybe an OpenAI.
And I just wanted to add a little bit about your question is, so GPT-4, which is, let's say, a much kind of more upgraded or enterprise version of this, it's not cheap. I mean, so it's based on tokens, and roughly 1,000 tokens, which I think is kind of the bulk price you buy, is roughly translates to about 750 words. And keep in mind, it's input and output. So your prompt counts and its response. And so, there have been examples of people who have let this thing run wild and they've run out of tokens, like whatever, because you can, buy in chunks of tokens. I mean, it'll run out of tokens in a matter of seconds. And, let's say roughly like from a chatbot kind of co-pilot experience, a couple paragraphs in and out. I mean, you're talking $2 or $3 to get it to work correctly for that response. So I only wanted to raise, it can be extremely powerful, but also can rack up some pretty big bills.
If you're using just the chat interface and not the API necessarily, you could buy it for $20. And it's almost I would say for your general purpose stuff, it's almost unlimited. So I think nowadays they've actually closed off registration to that piece, but you could join a wait list. But it's called ChatGPT Plus. You could sign up right on the.
Correct.
So I think last question, and I want to get everybody's answer on this one. So from an order of magnitude, what do you guys think this is? Is this the discovery of fire? Is this the internet? Is it electricity? Or is it the nuclear bomb? What is it from a scale perspective? Do you think might be like a generational finding? You can go.
For me, I think it's analogous to when we got the personal computer, when we got introduced to the internet, mobile phones, et cetera. And we had all kind of, as a panel, had a bit of discussion on this. And it also has like all the trappings of where we were at when we were first introduced to those things, which again was largely novelty in the beginning. Then people started to learn how to integrate it, use it, and ultimately move from novelty to utility and efficiency. And now they're indispensable. And so, I mean, that's kind of how I feel it, that it is that significant of change and possibly more, but it'll, I think, take ultimately some time before we see mass adoption and kind of daily life and use to a point where it becomes indispensable.
So I grew up pre-internet. So I remember the dial-up modem sound that I tried to muffle late at night, so my parents didn't know I was getting online. But I remember smartphones. So to me, this feels different. And I don't know if it's because this feels more human-like. I can still remember holding an iPhone and thinking, wow, this is amazing, but it's just an object, right? The first time I took a deep dive with ChatGPT, I was literally running down my stairs, like heart racing, showing everyone in my house, calling friends and family. And that felt different. And I don't know if it's just because the interaction felt more human and it just therefore made it much more personal and real. But for me, it felt different. I don't know if you're going to have any other questions, but if this is the last chance I have to talk to you guys on the mic here, I just want to make a request in kind of response to some of the previous questions about, this is serious stuff, right? And I've seen the looks on the faces of my students, and I'll ask you guys the same thing I asked them, like, well, what are you going to do? I think you guys are probably part of the exceptional group that you're here, you're having this conversation. There's a lot of people who aren't having this conversation. And I think more people need to be having this conversation so we can dive in and learn as fast as we can and try to keep up with it so that we can try to steer this in the right direction. Or we can do like, what was his name in the Matrix, Cypher, right? He got plugged back into the Matrix, right? He said, ignorance is bliss, right? That's tempting, but I hope you guys will be tempted in the other direction, because we need good people asking these hard questions, and I hope you guys will continue to do that.
So maybe my comment then on is this, how big is this? I see it, and I think Doug was kind of going down that particular path. So Jeff's going down that path in terms of this is different because it's much more human. So we've got a socio-technical solution where previously we had essentially a tool. So all things to date have been tools that we've kind of used and added. This now becomes something that's much more like us. And so it's an artificial version of us, a digital us, that has capabilities and strengths that in some ways are superior to us in terms of its knowledge and its ability to understand much more or recall much more than we can. And so the whole thing of we're at a different place dealing with a different thing as compared to all the other, be it an iPhone, be it a fax machine, be it the internet. And so we're really in my mind, in a different space. And therefore, this is on a different trajectory. I would say, and in fact, I was saying to a number of people, this was an inflection point, I believe, in November last year. I think we've seen a couple even more inflection points since then, as we've seen GPT-4 come out, the Auto GPT and things like that, where we're already seeing a very steep curve. So yeah, things have changed and have changed fundamentally, and I think they will continue to change. Let me underline as well, Jeff, you said something really great, and that's very much, I've talked about it a couple of times, human flourishing has to be part of our thinking. And yes, our little bit is important, but at the same time, we are IT leaders, and this is technology that we are bringing into the world. And in some ways, our ownership and our responsibility as IT leaders to bring this new capability to the world in a way that is thoughtful, ethical, both positive and negative, making sure that we balance for the good and for human flourishing is really our responsibility. That's what we've always done as IT leaders, and this even more so.
Wow, amazing. I hope that was just incredible for you guys and certainly incredible for me. What incredible thought-provoking messaging here. I just want to thank Roy and Brandon and Jeffrey and my good friend Quentin over there. Thanks so much for their insights. Please show them your absolute appreciation, right? So at least the guys that are here, hopefully we're going to stick around. I think we have the room for maybe until 8, maybe, I hope. Yeah. So do stick around. I think the bar is still available. So grab a drink, have a discussion, maybe catch up with these guys, ask the question you weren't asking in public forum. I just want to say thank you, everybody, for coming. I hope the guests enjoyed it. Please do consider joining us in Sim, Arizona, and have a very safe trip back wherever you're going. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great privilege. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Quentin.